Hey, hello, and howdy. Thanks for joining me here today. It's Will Frazier with Craftsman Real Estate Services, and I'm going to dive into a book. I'm actually not going to literally dive into it because that would hurt pretty bad. It's a pretty thick book. But today, I'm going to introduce you to a book that I bet you've heard of before, and I bet you've not read, and you need to, like today. And if you don't know my personal philosophies on a lot of different things, you probably don't know that I'm a library nerd. But instead of rushing out to buy this, check with your local library and see if they have a copy. And if so, maybe go ahead and reserve it for like 5 times because it's pretty thick. But it is a very surprisingly light read for the subject matter and the thickness. It is Thinking Fast and Slow by Daniel Kahneman, and also he notes some contributors to this work that he pulls from a lot in the book. But the reason that this book has been so instrumental to me as a real estate investor, but also a real estate agent, a broker, a property manager, a father, a husband, a member of a broader community, is because what Daniel talks about in Thinking Fast and Slow is that, and the reason it's fast and slow, is that there are two systems at war and at interplay with us constantly in our minds. And this has been largely acknowledged by different idea streams of philosophy, of religion, of social thought, of societal thought. And so this isn't a new concept, but what Daniel Kahneman dives into with System 1 and System 2 is how they interplay off one another. What system does what system do we think does something that actually does the opposite, and what are our liabilities associated with that? So one of the things he talks about that I thought was very instrumental was the halo effect. If you look at the history of US presidents, there is a surprising trend, and not surprising trend if we think about it, that on average, they have been taller than average, they have had a higher muscle mass than average, they have been better looking than average. That's a little subjective, but you can measure density and height. But why is it that presidents have embodied these physical traits in such a specific way? Well, the halo effect dives into that. It talks about how we tend to give the benefit of the doubts, or we tend to attractive people. We tend to, and this is part of why this book is so instrumental and so amazing, is that this isn't like a social agenda. This is like a scientist diving into behavioral psychology, behavioral economics, and how they intersect with each other. And so if you look through that lens, you know that these 6'3", 6'4", 250-pound muscle-strapped gentlemen, in our deepest layers of thinking, as we have gone to elect our leaders, we have elected men that look like military leaders as the president, even though the presidency doesn't necessarily have a whole lot of military roles other than figurehead roles. So anyways, the halo example was one of the first things that really just blew my mind. And then what Kahneman goes on to talk about at deeper and deeper levels are how things like anchoring comes into our life every single day. For example, this is the idea of anchoring that blew my mind and started to be something that I used in real estate and that I would give to you as a gift. Is if you are saying, if you're answering any question, the presence or absence of things around that are going to influence your answer to that question. So for example, if I said, we're in a coffee shop and I said, hey, how much do you think this cup of coffee is? And you were unanchored, you might say $3. You would pull from whatever your most recent or whatever your psychological norm is for a cup of coffee. But if I said 10, what do you think the price of this cup of coffee is? Even though 10 has nothing to do with anything we're talking about, it is a completely unrelated, separate number. But the fact that it was recently said will mean that what you would have said in the absence of any number reference points or anchors, your answer, because you're exposed to a number that's 10, is going to trend a little higher than if that same number, random disconnected number, was 1. 1. How much do you think this cup of coffee costs? And so you can think of it, you can think, I wouldn't do that. Read the book, read the research, it happens. So how does that play out in offering? How does that play out in everything we do in negotiations? Well, the presence of numbers, even completely irrelevant, extraneous numbers, can impact what someone expects. So you have a house. It is a $150,000 house, and that's the true market value. And you put it on the market, and then a massive global pandemic happened, and people are scared, and people aren't offering on houses. This was like March for 2 weeks. So your house is on the market, and then somebody, after 3 weeks, everyone's nervous. Somebody makes an offer, and this is how they present it. We thought of offering $120,000, but as we worked on it, we tried to get to a number that we thought that would be honoring to you, or that could be palatable to you. So what we'd like to offer is to purchase your home at $140,000. All of a sudden, you have entered a new anchor point. They're already anchored off their list price. They're already anchored off the idea that they have listed the house at $150,000, and perhaps that's the market value. But in absence of other data points, you will introduce an offer for $140,000, and they're going to reference your offer of $140,000 off of $150,000. So that feels low. So by understanding anchoring, which I picked up from reading this book, and then once you understand it, you see it in a bunch of behavioral economics textbooks. No, I'm sorry, don't read textbooks. Books. Never read a textbook if you can read a book. And you see this trend everywhere, that simply by entering another data point, you create a tendency to perceive a number as higher or lower. And so by entering the data point of 120,000, you took the person who was fixated on 150,000 and esteemed that as the right, or maybe even like the low price. We're trying to get someone to buy it, so we're giving you a deal at 150,000. Well, now I introduced a low data point. And psychologically, when you see my offer of 140,000, you will feel as though it's higher than you would if I just came in and offered $140,000. And so understanding how human psychology works, but specifically understanding what Kahneman points out as system 1 and system 2 and how they interact, and how so many times what happens in our brains is completely irrational, completely seemingly untethered and unchained from our processes of logical reason. And they are, but it's because there is a different system there that's working in tandem and in parallel in our minds to our conscious rational logic. And so anchoring effect, the halo effect, many, many other great things can be found in Daniel Kahneman's Thinking Fast and Slow. And this can be something that you can utilize to have greater efficiency with negotiations, to have a better efficiency at leading your life. Because if you understand the things that trigger you, if you understand the fact that, like, J.C. Penney's is the old example, but like whatever that is for you, like Kohl's, if you understand the fact that they say that $35 is the MSRP for this, and then it's always marked down because no one ever pays full price at these stores, or Hobby Lobby is becoming the same model. But they're saying that this is the market value, and they're always crossing it out because they have just created a high anchor. They have just suggested to you that this is the market value, but you're getting such a steal, which makes you feel like a winner. And you go, oh, $17 is a great price for that. I just won so much. If you can understand when you're being anchored, when these false reference points are being introduced, then you can better steward your own life. You can negotiate better, and you can understand how to lead a more productive, fulfilling, satisfied life. So I recommend this book very highly. I'd check it at your local library to see if you can get it there. If not, it is available on Audible, Amazon.com, and probably everywhere else books are sold. Thanks for tuning in. We'll be back soon with another book recommendation and diving into how to do all things well, including our channel, tenanting well, investing well, and a host of other content. Thank you.